Good morning, y'all. It's Filter Free Friday. I'm so glad y'all here. I'm a little late because I'm a little tired. Jesus. Um, I remember one time when I was in high school, there were some performers from Nigeria who had come to our assembly to teach us a song, and it went Funga Alafia, Ashe, Ashe. Funga Alafia, Ashe, Ashe. And the performers were singing, and we weren't really following along. And my high school boyfriend, who was the captain of the basketball team and captain of the football team, he started clapping and he started singing along. And then eventually, all of the other kids started clapping and singing along. And that sticks with me because I think it is important for us to know and understand that we have power and we have influence and we have a responsibility to use that power and that influence. And so I think about, how do I demonstrate that every day? I was in a cab in New York for a really long time, an hour and 15 minutes, and actually it was an Uber. And the guy had different political leanings than me. And he asked me if I liked the current president. And I know when people tend to ask that question, especially of a Black woman in America, they have some ideas, and I don't know that they're really being curious. And so I said, "Well, what do you like?" And then he proceeded to tell me about who he likes and why, and I said, "Okay, that's interesting." All of his reasons were financial in nature. And because I've been practicing empathetic listening, and I know I have not always been good at it, I was listening for understanding. I wasn't listening for accuracy. And I was so really trying to understand who he was. I said, "So it sounds like money and wealth and attainment are in your top three values. And if so, then that means that's the candidate you should like." He's like, "No, no, 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 no. I just don't care what people do in their personal lives." And I said, interestingly enough, I don't know that I care what people do in their personal lives either until said things are criminal in nature, until said things go against um, the values that I think are good for us in our country. And then I took some time to talk about what leadership competencies are proven to be helpful in organizations. And then I shared, good morning, Sylvia. And then I shared, why I didn't support said candidate. And normally, I would like go back and forth and argue with a person about their political beliefs. But again, like I said, I was in this Uber for an hour. And two, I was tired. And three, I'm trying to work on my empathetic listening. And four, what is my responsibility to show up like my high school boyfriend and demonstrate what good looks like and just invite people to follow instead of trying to force people to think what I think? And so when I consider the model that Ronnie showed that day and how eventually all of us in the auditorium were singing Funga Alafia, Ashe, Ashe, which has a beautiful meaning. It's like, I looked it up this morning. I welcome you with my thoughts, my words, and my open heart. See, I have nothing up my sleeves. May peace be with you. And it still sticks with me today. And we're looking at almost actually 30 years later. There was another opportunity this week when there are some kids at a school district in Pennsylvania who wanted to have a drag queen day for Spirit Week. And I said that to another person who was at this HR conference, and I could see her immediate reaction was, I also said it to a chief HR officer of a reputable organization here in Kansas City a couple weeks ago, and he too was almost like, and instead of just doing that thing that I typically do, which is argue, debate, um, I just took a page out of Ronnie's book and I was like, hey, drag is really just a costume. That's what it is. And wouldn't it be interesting to be able to put on over the top makeup? And if all the children were doing so, um, to really just, I don't know if we can normalize drag, dressing in drag, but I think we can help people to see the hypocrisy of maybe liking a Mrs. Doubtfire or a Nutty Professor or a Martin Lawrence show or even Wanda from the Jamie Foxx show, and then have an issue with over the top costume. But I was neutral. And in my neutrality, it was interesting to see people kind of let down their guards because what I did not tell them is that in this school with district with thousands of children, there were like 11 or 12 kids, a dozen, who wanted to support the banning of drag throughout the country and thought that as part of their advocacy work in the LGBTQ Student Government Association that they could make a difference in this way. And that there have been families who had moved away from this district because of how their children were being treated. That the group that has the largest number of suicides in this nation is our children in K through 12 who happen to be gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender. You see, I normally would lead with those kind of facts. But instead, I was just like, huh, it's a costume. And I'm just grateful today that Ronnie demonstrated to me what it looks like to have power that might not be positional, power that might not be entitled, but power to influence. And so I wonder sometimes what's our responsibility when we are large news outlets? What's our responsibility when we are the patriarchs of our families? What's our responsibilities when we do have positional power? What's our responsibility when we are in the in group in organizations that we belong to? What's our responsibility when we sit on boards and we can change the racial makeup, the gender makeup, the voice makeup of the people in the seats? And instead of doing so, we just sit there dangerously indifferent, not willing to move. You see, this world's not going to become a more empathetic place on its own. It's going to require those of us who are not hateful, who do not have anything up our sleeves, who do not have an agenda, who are not moved by greed and money and power and position to say, I want to spark an empathy revolution. And today, I just hope more and more people will join me because I am moved to tears thinking about 16-year-old me watching these Nigerian performers on the stage trying to pour into children, acknowledging their dignity, knowing that many of us had the genetic connection to Nigeria. One 17-year-old boy started clapping his hands and singing along. And it was a beautiful day I'll never, ever forget. And so May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I know that there are many people who need lots of support. And I am blessed to have had and been in therapy for, gosh, now probably 25 years and had that support. Um, Almost all of that time have been also blessed to have Black therapists, many times Black and female therapists. But I was on a webinar last night for 2 hours talking about the challenges that people face with racism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, anti Semitism. And I was reminded that if you need help, you don't have to wait until you find somebody to look like you, especially if you are in crisis. Um, on the plane back from Manhattan yesterday, I was watching A Man Called Otto, A Man Named Otto. I'm not exactly sure of the title, but Tom Hanks is the main character. And this poor man, after his wife died, was like he tried probably 5 different times to commit suicide. And each time he was interrupted, either by a neighbor who needed his help, or by a neighbor who was bringing him food, or um, by a neighbor who used to be his wife's student, um, just interrupted. And it was a fictional movie, and fiction can help us, our empathy muscles grow. But it was a fictional movie that really reminded me that there are a lot of people going through a lot of great things, and that sometimes we don't know what that is. And by the way, I'm doing okay right now. I'm just teary because I know that hatefulness should not be winning. I know that so many people actually do care about whether or not um, the person nearest to them has a need. I know that. I know that there are more well meaning, good natured people in the world. I know that. And I just don't know how to get us off of center to do something different than we have been doing. And I was convicted last night because let me tell you what God knows. Even though you might not describe me as kind and nice, I'm definitely not mean. I am definitely, if I tell you I am your friend, that the conversations I have in private about you are the same conversations I have in public about you. And recently, I was embarrassed greatly when people I thought were my friends were clearly having different conversations in private about me than the ones they were having in public about me. And why do I bring that up? I bring it up because last night I was reminded on this webinar to remember that people have holes in their hearts, honey. They don't turn their backs on you or mistreat you or gossip about you or lie on you or purposefully try to embarrass you or just be involved in all manners of evil against you just because. Hurt people try to hurt people. And my job is that even in those moments, I got to try with everything I got in me to demonstrate what good looks like. And I was like, sometimes the neighborhood me is like, square up. If I'm just being honest, I don't want to. I don't want to. But how can you launch an empathy revolution if you're not willing to be the one to go first? So I guess all I'm saying to you, sugars, is today is a good day to write a nice note to your mental health provider if you have one. I think I'm doing my little part to clap my hands about the importance of therapy and grief support and mental health support. And nothing like Mother's Day, graduations, Father's Day, wedding season, all these things to just cause people's hearts to break wide open, especially if they've loved deeply, about moms and dads, children that they've loved and lost, or all those things. And so I went back to my church. I was nervous about doing so. I know some of y'all who've been following me for a while know I broke up with my church during the pandemic because I felt like anti-racism wasn't valued there. But life has a funny way, God was keep putting into me, lots of different ways. You need to go back, you need to go back, you need to go back. And I've been twice now, and as God would have it, the first sermon was full of anti-racist ideas. And that wasn't even what the sermon was about. And then the second time I went, I had a beautiful private conversation with my pastor, and it was wonderful. And in the lobby, there were all these papers about what is anxiety, the cycle of anxiety, and how to cope with anxiety. And I was just like, you know what? I need to find my way back. I need to find my way back. So I guess I'm just here saying once again, I might be the worst person to tell you about empathy. But if you feel up to it, I wrote a little book called Spark the Heart. And it's available on Amazon, Target, Goodreads. And I'd appreciate you reading it. Letting me know what you think of it. If you buy into this idea that we can together spark an empathy revolution, I want to know what you think. If you prefer to listen, the book's on Audible, and I did the audio version. But I'm grateful for Ronnie today for demonstrating what it looks like to show that if we just speak up, and sometimes that just looks like with a clap of the hands, that we can bring more people along. And sometimes when people are not doing what they're supposed to do, maybe they could be going through their own little mental health crisis. You don't know if they are dealing with the loss of a baby or child. You don't know if they can't find somebody to love them. They don't feel loved. You don't know. You have no earthly idea. And so in the absence of information, I think that movie, A Man Called Otto, was a good reminder that we could be the only person that sometimes people have available to them. I was in New York yesterday and the day before, and several people came up to me after my keynote to say, it was really good for me to be here with you today. And I'm glad you were here. And sometimes it's hard for me to just like stand there and receive that. But you need to. You need to. Because how do you offset um, racist things that you hear about in the news, or when you find out that a former president has been found liable in a sexual assault case? Uh, how do you keep up the spirit and energy if you're not taking it in when people are pouring into you? So you have to. And some of the other tips and suggestions people had was to move your body, get that heart rate up, eat real food, not too much, mostly plants, get some sun. Y'all know the list. It's the same list that keeps us from getting diabetes and having strokes and having hypertension and wards off Alzheimer's and all the other things. So don't become numb. Sugar to all the people who are out here um, being attacked, families being impacted by gun violence. And in the end, just remember, Funga Alafia, Ashe, Ashe. I welcome you with my thoughts, my words, and my open heart. See, I have nothing up my sleeves. May peace be with you. It's Filter Free Friday, y'all. We got work to do.